got to this computer. Okay. Back to sharing my screen. Okay, so let's do a quick recap, and if you guys have questions on the homework or any other questions, let's first go through that, and then we'll go through this second session. So last Saturday, we actually went through the overview of the course and the objectives, which were that we will be working on a PHP, MySQL, HTML kind of code, which to create a volunteer management system. And we also went through what a volunteer management system should consist of. We won't be covering all of those. We'll create a few initial screens, but then you're welcome to expand that as you start to learn more. We did go through Infinity Free, and as I mentioned, Infinity Free is just one of the free web hosting. It completely is free, so that's why we went with that. But there are a few more like Heroku and others. And then the good ones are like GoDaddy or HostGator, but you have to start paying from first month there. So that's why, at least for the course, we went through completely free version. We did set up a free website account there, and we went through the HTML. We actually didn't go through PHP, so we will go through PHP today. And we created a simple HTML page, and it should have looked something like mine was, and I had misspelled it. So this is what we had. This is where we stopped last week. And then I had asked if you can create maybe an image or anything else. So any questions from last week? I think Prabhika and mentioned, but Sari, Aditi, any other questions?
No.
Okay, so let's go to session 2 today. We will learn about databases, which is very important for any website. We'll learn about MySQL. We'll set up a MySQL database in this infinityfree.com. We'll create some tables for the system. And we'll also go through PHP today and then connect using MySQL. Okay, so today we'll stop at, after learning the PHP, we'll create a PHP page. We'll store it on our website, and we'll also be able to call our database and show some data. This data will not be for the volunteer management system. That would be the last session next week, where we'll actually create the session. But before that, we need to learn a little bit more. Let me quickly also, let's go to Bhavani Temple website. If you see here, as I mentioned last week, the website is created using WordPress, this W here, and mostly 80–90% of the websites in the world are today created using WordPress. What I wanted to quickly show you is appearance. So while WordPress is drag and drop kind of system, you create the site using let's say images, widgets, etc. But if you are really interested in going behind the scenes, and if you are creating maybe, let's say for your college application or anything like that, the code behind this is all in PHP. And this is like JavaScript, Java, but any of these, if you see on the left-hand side, the website's header, index page, or any pages are coming through PHP. And that's why while using, let's say, Node.js or any other tools, which are new tools, which are good, but knowing PHP for creating a WordPress website is always a good thing. So for example, if we look at, let me see. Right now it's very slow, but yeah, in index.php, if you look, everything is inside PHP code. Okay, so that's why this course, I thought maybe teach you guys PHP along with database. Okay, so let me cut back here. I see a couple more people join. So Sanvi, any questions? I think you had sent the homework. Looks like you were able to do the image. Any questions from last week? Maybe on mute, but if there is, feel free to unmute yourself. Okay, so as I mentioned, this week we will discuss about databases and MySQL. Now, in our first session, I had asked that every one of you, and I think some of you knew HTML, but none of you knew, just one second. Sanvi, is that a problem? You can't unmute. You should be able to. Let me. I think last week you were able to unmute. Ask to unmute. Let me see. Others are able to, right? I think you were able to unmute. Aditi, you also were able to talk. So I don't know, Sanvi, maybe something on your machine. You may want to look at that, but otherwise you can just text or send a message. Okay, so let's continue. So yeah, I guess most of you had mentioned you have not used a database or didn't know much about database. So I thought maybe I'll start with a little bit of basics and then we'll create the database. So, so what is a database? So it's an organized collection of structured information or data, basically stored in an electronic or computer system to efficiently store, retrieve, and manage data. So we will look into creating a database and also the tables. Basically, it's let's say you want to know which students or how many students are in school, right? So you would create an Excel maybe where you would have rows of students, their name, first name, last name, date of birth, etc. And each one of those, let's actually do it here. So let's say I want to know how many students are in the school, right? So I'll have like a first name of the student, last name, date of birth, email, etc. And let's say first name is Vijay, Agarwal, some date of birth and some email, right? This is a record. Think of this as a database where you have the data of several students. Each row is a record for the student. And within the row, you have columns, which are called columns or attributes of that row. So first name, last name, date of birth, email, etc. become the columns in the row. And this whole thing is maybe stored in, when I save it, let's say I called it students.excel, right? That becomes a table. And several tables make a database. Okay, but this is on Excel. We'll try to create this in an electronic computer system, which is a database on, let's say, website. Basically, its purpose is, again, as I said, efficiently store, but also retrieve and manage. So manage is you can change. So for example, I think I had misspelled, so I can change, and I change, editing, or making any of the different changes. That's managing the data, right? So there are two components. There is the data, which is the actual information, names, addresses, etc. And then a database management system, DBMS, which is the actual software. So for example, MySQL will work through MySQL. There is Oracle, there is SQL Server, and there are several types of database management systems. Okay, also please feel free to unmute you and ask any questions so that it can be interactive. Don't wait till the end. Okay, so let's go to what are different types of databases. There is a relational database which uses tables to store data with rows and columns. That's how we saw this. We can think of this as a table, student's table. It has rows and has columns. Okay, and these types of databases are like MySQL, PostgreSQL, or Oracle, or any of those. Basically, it has tables. And we'll talk about keys also. Actually, in the next slide, I'll talk about primary keys and foreign keys, but that's what a relational database consists of. Recently, or maybe I think a few years back, there are different types of databases. Some of them are NoSQL databases. Basically, in relational database, you will write a SQL, structured query language, which is a query to, let's say I want to know how many students are in this table, right? So I'm querying the database or the table to get the information. Or I want to know what is the date of birth of a certain student. That is called querying the database, and there is a language for that. So that is SQL. But recently, there are new types of databases. One of them is NoSQL database, and it's mainly used to store unstructured or semi-structured data. Some of those are MongoDB and Redis. I think you might have heard these names. Basically, these are for high-end data. So like the whole document, a PDF document, complete document can be stored. A lot of things like Facebook, social media, they use NoSQL database. They have a lot of data to store, and the retrieving the data in NoSQL databases is very fast as compared to the relational databases. But both are important. Again, as I mentioned, their usage is a little bit different. Most websites you will see use relational databases, MySQL. A lot of social media uses NoSQL databases, MongoDB, etc. Again, key differences: relational databases are structured, uses SQL, structured query language, for querying the database. NoSQL databases are more flexible, and as we go into details of relational, you will see how the structured databases and the flexibility in the structured database is less. But NoSQL databases can handle large volumes of diverse data, and that's why they are good for social media, because one, there is like every millisecond, there is a new post coming, and so there is a large volume of data, and retrieving that kind of data in a structured database is slow. That's why this whole idea of NoSQL databases. But in this course, we will walk through relational databases only, and NoSQL databases maybe sometime later. Okay, so let's see, like I said, relational databases use tables to represent data and relationships between data. The key concepts: tables we already discussed, store data in rows and columns. Let's talk about primary and foreign keys. A unique identifier for each record, and the foreign key is a field in one table that uniquely identifies a row in another table. So for example, let's say I have this, let me add another column called ID, right? So for each record, I want to give it an ID, which is a unique ID. So if I have another record, each one of these, each record is identified by a unique number. Another student cannot have the same number as, let's say, a different student. And this is called the primary key. Primary key of each record is a unique ID. Once you define a primary key in the database, in the table, if you enter the same key for another record, the database would not allow it and it will reject it. So that's a primary key. Now, let's say I want to know this student is in which class, right? So let's say let me actually insert here and call this as the student table. So student table has all this data. But let's say we have another table called class table, right? And then let's say class has IDs again, and maybe a class name. And ID is 1, and class is 11th grade, 2, 12th grade, and so on, right? So I can have multiple classes. Now, so again, this is a primary key for the class. Now I want to know which, let me fix this, which class is Vijay in and which class is this test student in, right? So if they are in different classes. So then we can create another table. Let's create another one, student in class. Now, I do not need to put in here something like 11th grade and then say Vijay. That's one way to do it. Now, in student in class table, I know which student is in which grade. But think about it. I want to know for this student, what is his last name? Now I have to go back here and get the last name of that student. But also, let's say for some reason my name changes, right? In future, and I'm, let's say, Vijay K. Now I have to go and make the change in this table also, right? So maintenance is a big problem. And there could be many other tables where my record is being stored. So to fix that problem, what we could have is, let me actually insert here, let's say class and student. So instead of storing it like this, what if I store class is 1 and student is 1? Let me actually delete this. Now this class 1 is attached to this one and student 1 is attached to this one. To make it more easier, let's call it S1, S2, let's call it C1 and C2. Now here I would say C1 is attached to S1. So between these, within this table, now I know student S1, who is Vijay, is attached to or is in class C1, which is 11th grade. This concept is called foreign keys. So I have a foreign key to class tables, primary key, and I have foreign key students table to the student tables, primary key. I'll stop for a minute here. If any questions, if that concept is clear or not. Okay, if no questions, then let me continue. So a relational database, very important, uses tables to represent the data and then has a relationship between those tables using primary keys and foreign keys. Okay. So, okay, I think I have a slide here. So we have students table where we have columns like the student ID, and we are going to make it as a primary key. Then it has first name, last name, email address. So student ID, which is a primary key, John Doe, J. Smith, and then we have an email. And then in this case, instead of class, we are doing courses, right? So courses table, Math 101, History 101. If we see there is a course ID for math and course name, 101 and 102. And then for each course, we also have how many credits you get, 3, 4, etc. And then we want to have another table where we have enrollment. So which students are in which courses. So in this case, you'll see that enrollment ID for enrollment table, there is a primary key, but the main thing is the student ID, which is a foreign key, and the course ID is another foreign key. So looking at here, we know that student 1, which was John Doe, is in course math and also in the second course, I think, which one was history, right? So student 1 is in 101, but student 1 is also in 102. So John Doe is in math and history, while student 2, Jane, or I think Jane, is in history. Jane is not in math. So using this table and joining it to the other tables, we can know which student is in which course. Make sense? Okay, so those are the basics of the database. I think some of you may, I don't know if now they teach this in high school, maybe 11th or 12th grade. They should be in the school if you guys are creating maybe websites, etc. So, but those are the main basics you need to know. So now that we know, we are not going, Excel is just something which probably everyone uses in-house or on your computer. But when creating websites, we need a database management system, right? And MySQL is one of those kind of database management systems. MySQL, it's an open source, it's free, and it's used widely in all the web applications. And again, like it's a strong community support. So if you have any questions, etc., you can always get to that community support and ask questions. It's open source, but it's highly performant. So you see all the websites, even like the Bhavani Temple or any of the websites, they use MySQL, very good performance. It's also scalable. So as we add more data, more, let's say, volunteer management system has later thousands of volunteers, the scalability is good with MySQL. Flexible and secure also. Okay. So now we will do some hands-on exercise. We will set up a MySQL database on infinityfree.com. Again, if you are using HostGator or GoDaddy, they all give you MySQL database as part of the hosting. So we will go to Infinity, you will sign up. This you have already done last week. You have a free account, which you verified your email, and then you navigate it to your control panel. Now let's go to actual creation of the database. You can follow along with me, otherwise I'll give you 5 to 10 minutes to do this exercise. So if we come back here, this is our account. If you click on your account, last time we saw File Manager. If we go to File Manager, this is where we can, in htdocs, we can store our files. Today we are going to work through the databases. So if you see on the left-hand side here, there is a MySQL database. Click on that. You will, I don't think you are seeing this MySQL database, so you have to go and create a new database. When you create the database, it will ask you for a username. It will give you a password and also the host name and the port. All of these are very important. So when you are creating it, make sure you copy those. I think I have it. Probably, yeah. So So we need to know our server name, which is this host name, username, which is your MySQL username, your password, which you would know, and then the database name would be this one. Okay, once you create your database, next thing you will do is go to phpMyAdmin. This is a tool that allows you to connect to your database. So if we go back here, my database is IF0369352, and this XXX is actually VMSSession2. That's what I named it. And then in this tool, I'll walk you through, you guys through this. We'll start creating some tables. We'll start working through this and maybe insert some data. So I'll stop here. First, how about all of you go ahead, create your database. Make sure you copy all this in a notepad, because we'll use that information in the next exercise. So I'll stop here, go ahead, create. When you're done, either unmute yourself and let me know, or put it in chat when you're done. Okay, so Sanvi, you're done. Aditi is done also. Okay, Rambika is also done. Are you trying? I think you were also traveling, right? So I don't know if you are hands-on trying or not. Okay, Pari, should we wait for you, or are you able to do it?
Yeah, I'm able to do it.
Okay, great. Okay, so now we have our database created. Let's see how we can use it. So as I said, the next tool is phpMyAdmin. We clicked on that. It's a free software, again written in PHP, and it's basically to administer the MySQL database over the web. It can manage databases, tables, columns, etc. So we'll go through that. And we just saw infinityfree.com. We can manage databases there. So we will create some tables. Here is an syntax when you are creating a table. You say create table, give the table name, and then within brackets, you give each column and a data type for the column. Okay, you can give multiple columns. And this is very similar to what we were doing here in the Excel spreadsheet. We created a table, student table. The columns we created were ID, first name, etc., etc. So this table, this command will only create the shell of the table, or it's also called metadata of the table. The actual data will add later, right? So let's take an example. Create table users, and we are starting to now go for our volunteer management system, where we'll have users, events, etc. So we'll start creating a table users. It has an ID similar to this ID, which is a primary key, right? So we'll call it as a primary key. And there is also in MySQL, there is an auto increment. That means whenever we create a new record, instead of us putting in here next number, MySQL allows you to auto increment based on the last record which was created. We'll create another column called name. And if you see the data types here, right? So data types could be, actually I forgot to mention, the data type of ID was an integer. Name is a character type, and in MySQL it's called variable character. And then within brackets, you give it how many, what is the size of that character. We can also direct it to say a few things like this name cannot be null. So when you start inserting the records, and if the user does not give their name, we can force them or mandate them to give a name. Right? If we don't have this, it can allow a null value for the name. We'll need their email, again, variable character, not now. There is another, what is it? The mandatory thing you can say it is this email has to be unique. That means if when I'm entering the data here, if I give my email address here, if I give the same email address for another user, it will not allow to enter or create that record in the database. So that's this feature unique. We'll have password. Now, in our current sessions, we'll just allow user to enter a password. But generally, if you see the passwords are, when you are entering them, it's put as ****, so people don't see. But for our simple program, we'll have user enter the password. User can also enter their profile picture. And if they, so in a volunteer management system, if you remember session 1, I was saying that people can also say, I'm good in, let's say, computers, or I'm good in gardening or food preparation, etc. So if we know about those users and their skills, when an event comes, we can look at which users or volunteers can be used for that. And then maybe if they're available or not, or let's say the user at some point or the volunteer, they are going on vacation. So they can change this availability to say not available certain time. So just as an example of a table. Any questions on this before I go to the next table? Okay, so we will use this syntax to create our tables. We will also create another table, events. Create table events. Now it should be easy for you. Once I went through one table to look through it, you're going to have an ID, primary key, auto increment, will be an event name, not now, a date, time, can have a location, and the description of the event. Okay. And then we will have a table which is volunteer signups. We'll have an ID. We'll have the user ID and event ID. So event ID is actually this ID, and the user ID is this ID from the users table. And we are also letting the database know that user ID is a foreign key which references users tables ID column. Okay, so if you read through this syntax, basically we are telling create a table which is volunteer signups. It has an ID, user ID, event ID. So let's go back here, right? I had a students in class. I had two columns, class and students. And then the values were a foreign key to these. And that's what we are instructing in this create statement, saying foreign key, user ID is a foreign key which references users tables ID. And event ID, this column references events tables ID. Right? So now the system knows that whenever a value is added here, This one is user stable and this one is event stable. Okay, before we insert, let's actually create the table. So let's, I'll put this in the chat so you guys can copy paste, but let me first show you what we will do. So now you have created your database and you can click on PHP My Admin. That should take you to your database. It should be empty. Your database currently should be empty. You should only see this. Now let's walk through this UI. There is a structure, which is just telling what all tables are there. There's a tab SQL. This is where we'll write our structured query language. We can create tables, we can insert data, we can select data, and so on. Right? And then there are other things: search, query, export the data, import the data, etc. So all other things we can play around with that. But today and maybe next session will mainly be on this SQL. Let me see. Okay, not there. And query also. Okay. So we will create our table. I just copied pasted from my PowerPoint. We are going to create a table called users, ID, name, etc., etc. And when there is a go button here. So this query, when I click on go, it should create a table users with all this. Now in my latest page, yes, in my database, I already have that table. So I'm not, because if I do it again, it says you already have the table, right? But if you see in my table, I have an ID, name, email, password, profile picture, skills, and availability. So the table is created. Similarly, if we go back here, this is the users table, and it's showing the structure of that table. Let me click. So on the top, these are called. You can click any of these to go back to the table or the database, etc. Right? So if I'm here, I'm at the database level, and I clicked on users. You'll see on the top here, basically kind of the tab, which is the users tab. I can look at the structure. If you see here, these tabs changed, and I also have an insert tab now, where I can insert the data for the users table. And when I'm inserting, it's showing me the structure. This is the users table: ID, name, email, password, etc. You can give it a new ID, right? Let's say I have two records. So if you, because actually, let me go back here. Since we said auto increment or primary key, if I give the exact ID which was already existing, it will give me an error. So I have to always remember either to give the next value or it will auto increment. But then I can give here 3. I can say John. I think we didn't have the last name, so John Doe. Can give an email address, password, if we have profile picture, etc. And when you click on go, you'll add that record to your data. So I'm going to remove here, but I added 2 records already. So that's how those records will show. Once we create the users table, we will also create the events table and, sorry, it's in the same one, the volunteer signups table. Okay, any questions? So let me first put on the here. Yeah. So you can copy paste, but I would say later in over the week, try to create your own table and try to understand what are these different columns, etc. So for now, in the interest of time, I'll just send this to you guys. So go ahead, create the first table, and let's see if is everyone able to do it. Then I'll give you the instructions for second and third table. But let's try the first one first and make sure everyone is okay with that. Oh, I think I only sent it to Sanvi. Let me send it to everyone in the meeting so all of you can see it. and put it on the chat if you guys are done for the first table. Okay, and it's done. Okay, Radhika is done. Aditi and Pari, are you working on this? Okay, Aditi is done. Pari, how are you doing? Maybe you're mute, or if you can enter here if you're done, Pari. Done? Okay, good. So any questions on that from anyone? Okay, if not, let me then I'll just copy paste the other two tables. That should be quick now that you've done the first one. So we create the events table. Let me make sure I'm sending it to everyone. So go ahead, run this one, and also the volunteer sign up. Everyone. we can cut paste and just go to SQL and then run both of those commands and create your new two tables. I think since I'm sure you'd be able to now cut paste and create those tables, let me take the second part of this. So if you go to one of your tables, so go to the database on the top here, move this out, and open the users table, and then click on insert, and try to insert one or two records, and then click on go, so that you also learn how to manually enter that data. Okay, I think in the interest of time, I'll continue with the next slide. I think you guys have the instructions, so you can either do it after the class or during the week, and let me know if any questions. Okay, so I showed you how to enter the data using this insert statement. Let's see how to programmatically insert the same data. So the next instruction or the syntax for inserting the data is something like this. So insert into table, insert into table name, and in the brackets you put the column names, right? So I'm only inserting name, email, or password. But if you want, you can add other things like file picture, skills, availability, etc. Now, if you see here, I didn't put ID because ID was auto increment for us. So when we are inserting, since we already instructed the database or the table to auto increment the ID column whenever a new row comes, we don't need to programmatically insert that value, right? And so insert into table, columns, list of columns separated by comma, then the values. The main thing here to understand is, if you remember, we were talking about the data type of the columns. Name was a varchar and ID was an integer, right? So wherever you have a varchar or varchar, that should be under quotes, single quotes or double quotes. So this is my username, this is my email, again within quotes, and then my password. Actually, I think I have a few here, so it should be like this. So using this statement, we can insert a new record. Let's try playing around with it. You can actually go to SQL and be on that table which you are trying to insert, and then paste in here. Now, actually, if you see, here it's giving me an error X, right? And it's saying an ending quote was expected. So I wanted to keep this to show you how to troubleshoot if you are getting any issues, etc. So if there is an issue in your query, it will show it here. Now what happens is, between the slides and the actual MySQL, when you copy paste, it actually, this is either a double quote or an apostrophe, right? It converts it into this this character, and it doesn't like that character. That's why the problem is. So we will actually fix that. And if you see, till I fix all of them, it's going to give me this. And if I run go, it will not allow me to add that, right? now that I've fixed all of that, I can insert a new record called test user ABCD Gmail 123. I click on this. Now, if you see the other issue here at the bottom, it's saying a duplicate entry for the email. If we go back to our instructions for the table, users table, right? If you remember here, I had said email has to be unique, right? So this tool, MySQL and PHP MyAdmin, is looking through this instruction and saying, hey, you already have a record which has the same abcdgmail.com, right? So that means it should be something else. And now if I run it, it will insert the new record. And if I go to my users table, you see I just added, actually I think I gave the same name, but I made email as unique, and I'm able to add that record. Okay, so let me send you, let's try, if all of you can also try. Let me make sure I fix this before I send it to you. So either a single quote or a double quote, okay? Let me. So if you all can copy this and put it in the your SQL tag for the users table. Okay, hopefully everyone is able to add the data. If not, do let me know. I'm also, I think on the time, we are almost at 11 a.m. and we still need to go through PHP. I think we were a little slow today because of new concepts. Now, is everyone able to stay back another 15, 20 minutes to go through PHP? Or anyone who cannot? Let me know. Okay. So I'll try to go through the PHP. Okay, Pari, you cannot, but I'll be recording this session so you can go through that session. I'll send the Zoom link. Okay. Okay, so let's go through PHP real quick. Looks like others can stay back. So PHP, as I mentioned, it's really useful for creating any website. If you want to go through the behind the scenes of what is going on the website. It's a hypertext preprocessor. That is the name of this. Most probably you will always just call it PHP. So you'll use that. Again, open source, free language, and mainly suited for web development. And it can be embedded into HTML. And we'll try that today in our HTML. We'll add the PHP. It is a server-side language, so that's very important. When you are on a browser, let's go back here. I think this test page. This is called the browser, and this is on the user side. But this is actually going back to your server. The server is in, let's say, Infinity Free, right? This is where the server is. If anything you want the server to do, like get the data for your database or anything else, that is coming from the server and it is rendering on your browser. So that's the difference between a server side or a browser side. HTML is browser and PHP is a server side language, which means the code is executed on the server and the result is sent to the client as plain HTML. Again, I mean, it's easy to use, it's open source. It can be, it's very compatible, Windows, Linux, Mac OS, etc. Everywhere it can be used. It's highly flexible. Once you learn it, you can use it for any development. And main thing is it has an extensive database support. So MySQL support, you can query the data, create tables, etc., and retrieve the data to show on your HTML page. Performance is also good, and it has wide adoption. So if you see here, the initial Facebook, Wikipedia, etc., they were all written using PHP, MySQL. And as they grew, they maybe started using MongoDB, etc. But initially, Facebook was also, social media was also written in PHP, MySQL. So it's very good that you guys are learning this. You can use it anywhere. So let's quickly go through the PHP syntax. In one of the slides, I have links to websites where you can learn more details of PHP. And also, I have some books links which I sent on the group. So if you want to, if you are one who read through the books and learn through the books, you can get those books also. So as I said, PHP is embedded within HTML using special tags. And this is the important thing, to use the tags. The important tag is a less than sign, a question mark, and the word PHP. Anything which is inside this goes to the server and gets driven from the server side instead of the browser side. So when you write the code, it knows that I have to go to, it's a PHP, I need to go to the server and then implement it from there. And whenever you start a PHP with this, you have to close it with question mark and greater than sign. Anything between this is always PHP. Okay, so that's how the PHP code is written. Now, some of the things, I think some of you have learned Java, JavaScript, etc. So there are some things which you learn. For example, a variable. So a variable in PHP is a $sign, the variable name, and then you provide a value within double quotes. And every statement is ended by a semicolon. So for example, an echo statement is echo. This is like print on the browser, and we are going to print hello world by saying echo. Okay, there are conditional statements in PHP. Again, if you see, it should be inside question mark PHP, question mark greater than. We have a variable here. We just saw how to write variables. $number is value 10. And conditional statements. A conditional statement is like if some condition, then within braces, start brace, do something and close that brace. Else, another start brace, close the brace, anything within the else statement. So if the number is greater than 5, then echo number is greater than 5. And now in this case, since our number is 10, it's going to go to this. Let's say if our number was 1, then it would go to else and it will say number is 5 or less. Okay, any questions on that? The other basic syntaxes of PHP, and I'm going through a couple slides here, but as I said, I'll send you, there is one slide about the websites where you can learn this or the books, but mostly you will be using the 4 or 5, which I'm showing you in these slides. The last one, more important, is this loops. So again, within PHP, there is a for loop. For some condition, do something. Whatever you're doing, that should be under braces, starting and brace. And you're doing something in here, which we already saw, echo something. There is a variable. And this is an HTML thing, right? So this is what's showing. If you remember in your HTML, you can put a break line. This we are embedding within the PHP. And that's the power of PHP, that it can embed HTML inside this. But let's go back to the for loop and the condition. So for an initial value, initial condition, semicolon, I'm saying for I, initialize it to 0, where I, and then a filter, a condition. When my I is less than 5, do something. And then once you're done, increase the value of I. So $I plus plus. This makes increase the value of I. So what this would do is it'll start with a value of 0, and it'll say, is the value less than 5? Yes. It'll echo number is 0. Then it will increase, go back to the condition. It will be, the value would be 1, and it'll say, okay, number is 1. It'll keep increasing. When it becomes 6, there is no else condition, so it will stop. Okay. And the last, not very, I don't think you'll use it a lot of times, but this is where object orientation comes. So if you have something, a specific thing in your program, which you can, which you are going to do multiple times, right? You can call it as a function and call that function in your program. So for example, here again, you see within PHP, there is a function called greet, a name, and the function would return a value saying hello, whatever that name is. And then I can now have multiple echo greet Alice, echo greet Vijay, echo greet, so on. So I don't have to write this multiple times. I have to just call this function called greet with the name, which is our variable. We saw what a variable is, and it's just going to say hello, that variable. Okay. So some concepts on PHP I'll send. I think this is recorded, so you can go back and look through these. And while you're learning, these some of these slides should help. So let's now see how to embed PHP in HTML. Okay, if you remember our last week, we created a simple HTML, which was saying this is an HTML test page. Now on that test page, we are going to embed PHP and do something more. So if from our last week, we had HTML, we had a head, then we had a body, right? And then we closed the HTML tag. Within the body, we said, this is my HTML test page. This is what we said last time in an H1. Now, in this program, we'll say today's date is. Now the date is coming from the server. What is the date of the server? So we want to print that. So within this HTML, we are going to embed PHP. If you see here, question mark PHP and closing the PHP. So now when the browser is rendering this, it knows this is all HTML. For this, it has to go back to the server and get the current date. So date is a function in the format year, month, and date. It's going to go back to our server, the Infinity free server, at the date of the server and going to echo it here. Additionally, when we close that paragraph, we have another paragraph, again PHP. Yes, initializing a variable, greeting hello world, and we are echoing that greeting. Okay, so this is what we will write. Let me see if I have something in here. Oh, just closed it. So this is the program we will write. Let me actually send this to you on the chat. So copy paste it. I think again, in the interest of time, we'll continue. We'll not wait for everyone to finish this, but make sure you copy paste it, put it in an text pad. Later, you would go to your, oh, this is my meeting, okay. You would go back to your Infinity Free and you will use the file manager. You'll go to your htdocs, you'll copy your example PHP or whatever name you're going to give it, that page in here. Once you have done that, here, last time we did example.html, right? This time, whatever you're calling it, let me, because I'm calling it example php.php, and I'll run this. See, that was our code. I'm going to put it on the side here. Welcome to my website. So first thing, it's going here. then today's date is, and this date, today is 7/27, it's going from going to the server and getting that date value. And then it has a variable, and it's echoing that variable, hello world. Okay, so I think I have sent you the text in the chat. So copy paste, put it in Notepad. Later after the session, you can create a PHP page. Make sure, I think another thing I want to make sure you, oops, sorry. Here. The extension of this program should be .php. If you see here, earlier we had example .html. The extension of this program should be .php. So very important, don't call it HTML, actually call it PHP. And then once you save it on your file server, you can call that program. Okay, I will continue. So now that we know PHP and HTML and MySQL database, right? We've created a database. So back here, we created a database, we created our tables. We know how to write PHP, we know how to write HTML. Today, we will finish by calling our database using PHP and showing the data which we actually entered in this table. And then we'll stop today and have some homework for you guys, which you can do and maybe learn a little bit more during the week. So when we connect to the database, if you remember, I had asked you to store your server name, your username, password, and database name. I hope you guys have kept that. This was under, sorry, I'm going a little fast here. That was under, if you forgot to do that, that was here under your MySQL databases. This is your username, your host name, your port, you have a database name and the password. We are going to use that in the PHP. Sorry, it's here. We need the server name, which is your host name. You have your username, password, DB name. So these are the variables which we are going to give the value which you have copied. And then we are going to make a connection, another variable, which will be a MySQL connection. So again, you can copy this. I'll send this to you, syntax, and you can also go through the syntax, but I'll explain to you the syntax. Sorry, Control Z. A MySQL connection using the server name, username, password, and the database name. So I'm telling the PHP to make a connection to my database using this information. If the connection has an error, then again, there is a function, it will die, basically PHP, and it will say connection failed. And if you see, all of this is under PHP ads, right? So we will, so that's the connection we'll make. And after that, we will use a select statement to get the data and show it on our browser. So what we are doing here is we have a variable where we are asking the database to select. If you remember, these are our columns, right? ID, name, email from users table. Very simple statement to select the data. Select this. We get the result of that query, $SQL here. And we just learned about how an if statement works, right? So if the number of rows of that query are greater than 0, right? Actually, we didn't read through while. Maybe I should have, think I forgot to talk, but we went through for statement. So similarly, there is a while statement. Let me actually walk you through that. A while statement, what it does is while the condition is true within this brace, which is finishing here, it will do the condition. Okay, so while that condition is true, it's echoing. What it's echoing is the ID, which we just selected here, from the row, the ID value, the name value, and the email. Once the number of rows finishes, if there are no number of rows, it will say no rows found. But otherwise, it will display all this data for us. And then at the end, we are closing the connection, which we created in our first here. I think somewhere we created the connection. Probably. I think here, yeah, the connection. Any questions? So I'll send you this code also. Go back here. So I have my server name, my username, my password, my DB name. All of these you have to make your own, right? You will have your information. We'll make the connection, right? We made the connection. If connection failed, then it will give an error. Then we'll select from the table users. And if number of rows of users is greater than 0, then using the while statement, we will show the data. And then we'll close. Now, if you see here, this is all PHP. So in this case, we are embedding HTML inside, but everything is inside PHP. And then you store that into your file manager. Let me make sure I do have that. So db.php, let's see if it works. So once you do that, db.php. Now, let me go back here. So what this did is it made a connection to my database. It selected the data. And while there were a number of rows, it retrieved the data and showed here. So it showed me ID, which is 976. This is the value. Then it said name, gave me the name, email address, etc. Right? So I had test user, and if you remember, I had added a new email, ABCD, and so on. So this is how I'm seeing the data. So these are the building blocks. Once you try these out, the next session, we will do the actual voluntary management system where we will create more data inside our database. Okay, here we will create more users. We'll similarly create events, and we'll have volunteers sign up for those events. And we can do all of that using the UI and show that data on the user interface. So let me give you the code. So try this one, which I gave you earlier, and then let me also give you the db.php. Make sure, let me actually remove this. Make sure you update these 4 values based on your database, which hopefully you have copied. Also, the other thing is, because I'm copying it here into the Zoom chat, make sure if you get an error, some of these apostrophes may have changed, right? So make sure you put the apostrophes here. So let me send this. If every one of you can copy this, put it in a notepad. Again, we'll not wait today for everyone to do it, but do it at your own time during the week. And feel free to use that WhatsApp group channel if you have any questions while you're doing this, if there are any errors. So I think we already discussed about this. You'll have db.php. I think I just have a couple more slides. Let me walk through those. I have already sent this on the channel, but on the WhatsApp channel, but I'll send you the links here. And then there are some books you can also go through if you are interested in getting some books and reading through that. Otherwise, this php.net is a good website to learn what I was showing you. I showed you the basics, but if you want to get more details, you can go into any of these websites. And, okay, any questions? I think the PHP, we went a little faster than last time, but hopefully you guys understood the basics. If not, we have the whole week where you can try it out, ask questions on the channel. Okay, if no questions, I would say some of the homework assignments, you can go back to this site, php.net, or if you're buying books, try to look at form. This is an HTML. Link A, some of these. Try to just play around with this. It'll help you understand more of HTML. And we'll use the form next time. And also on PHP, try to just learn what are post files sessions. If you have questions, you can ask me in the channel. Not, we will use some of these in the next or final session. Any questions? Is everyone still awake? Hopefully. Okay. If this was too fast or too much information, please feel free to use the WhatsApp group to ask me questions. Make sure you log into this site, learn. And again, it's the whole programming coding is based on how much you put the effort. And that's how you become better on this. Okay, if no more questions, we will stop here today. I'll send you the Zoom link or the recording. So, and feel free to ask me questions on the WhatsApp channel. Thank you, everyone. Have a good week. Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Sure. Bye-bye.